Hi, everyone. Apologies for the little delay, but thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Amy, and I'm one of the SSI Science Communication interns this summer. This is our 7th episode of our Live with the SSI Intern series, where we get to interview other members of our intern cohort. To provide a little bit of background, SSI stands for Summer Systematics Institute, and this is a research experience for undergrads that is funded by the National Science Foundation. With the exception of myself and Tal, who's my co-host and co-producer, all of our other peers are working directly with Academy PIs/curators, as well as other members in their lab during the summer here at the California Academy of Sciences. So with this live stream series, we have a set of preset interview questions that we ask all of our interns, but please feel free to leave any questions or comments in the chat, and we'll make sure to get back to those as the discussion unfolds. Without further ado, I'm super excited to introduce our next amazing guest, Sophia. So Sophia, if you'd like, go ahead and just share your hometown, pronouns, home institution, and anything else you want the audience to know about you.
All right, great. Hi, Amy. Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone. My name is Sophia. I use any pronouns, and I'm from the Bay Area, specifically the town of Fairfax in the North Bay. And I did my associates at College of Marin, and I'm transferring as a junior this fall to UC Berkeley.
Awesome. I'm also from Berkeley, so go Bears. We'll just start off with that. So great. So our very first question, just sort of a softball one. How would you explain your summer research project to a 5th grader?
Absolutely. My research team is working to create a tree of life for a relatively understudied group of spiders called the marinoid clade. And specifically, my project is looking at the anatomy of an organ that's used for web making called the cribellum. And I'm looking through the literature for information regarding the behavior and habitat of marinoid spiders to fill in information about the living members of the group and their ancestors.
Yeah, that's awesome. Just out of curiosity, when you're building this tree of life, are you looking mostly at morphometrics data? So that's essentially sort of what species looks like, or are you looking more at DNA data, et cetera?
Absolutely, yeah. So previous parts of the project have used molecular phylogenetics to establish like a genetically based tree. And what we're doing now is assigning character states to morphological and behavioral data to do ancestor state reconstruction. So we'll learn a little bit more about what these spiders looked like in the past and what kinds of events might have led to their diversification.
No, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I think you did a really great job of touching on just sort of the fact that oftentimes people come in at research projects at different levels, and sometimes like some parts of the project have already been done and you're just sort of adding in a new way. So I think that collaborative aspect of science is not often talked about, and how it's like you don't always start and end with the same exact research team. Like people come and go and sort of bring in their own skills and perspectives, which is really, really great. And then also this like morphometrics data, like I think growing up, I definitely thought of like DNA analysis and like being in the lab and pipetting as science. But I think a lot of this internship has really shown me at least that like science comes in a lot of different forms that people might not actually be exposed to. And that actually is a really great segue to our next question, which is just, what did you think research was before entering this internship or any other form of research experience?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think I was a little misinformed by the stress in like high school and early college on the scientific method. It gave me a really reductive idea of research where I thought it would be about finding this one independent variable and then finding causation. And while that's a really interesting way of getting information about the world, the research I've done here at the Academy has been much more like open-ended and explorative in that we're doing observation-based research, so we can kind of pivot the questions we're asking based on the information that's coming in.
That's really great. I think I also was very much led astray by the way that we're taught about science. It's like, oh, you have a hypothesis, like you have a question and then a hypothesis, and then you like come up with a method section. And I think it seems very linear when you're first learning about it, except when you're actually doing it, you realize like you have new questions, or maybe like the answers aren't the answers that you thought. Oh, we've lost light. That's okay. But like sometimes projects I think take directions that you don't anticipate, and sometimes they take multiple directions at once. And I think that has been something that's been really exciting to sort of watch all of you undergo, is like being able to come in and pose your own research questions, and experience that sort of like non-linear, like non-regimented way of doing science.
Yeah,
And
it's been much more engaging than I think I expected.
yeah, like I think it's so much more freeing, which is not, I don't think I would have associated the word freedom with science like growing up. Like I think I thought it was like very like strict and sterile and like there are very clear rules, but it's actually, I think I find it's very, very creative as an endeavor, which also I think is something that has been surprising to me, at least, to sort of come to associate that word with science.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah. So our next question is just, do you feel like you are a scientist? And if so, what does that mean to you?
I do. I think science is really about like having a curiosity for the natural or the physical worlds and then pursuing those questions and seeking answers, especially if you're doing that in collaboration with other scientists or with the intent of like building upon the historical foundations of science, like the science that we already have. And so that anyone that does that kind of science is a scientist. I also really think the sense that there is such a high barrier of entry to calling oneself a scientist is potentially problematic because I think it stops a lot of people from seeing themselves as scientists and pursuing science, especially like first generation students who might perceive the risk of failure to be larger than it actually is.
Yeah, I think a lot of other interns who we've interviewed and talked to have also touched upon that idea of like the perceived high barrier of entry to science, and how, like, do you need, for example, a PhD to call yourself a scientist? And I think I really like your definition because it's like at its core, it's just, are you inquisitive and curious about our natural world? And I think just about everybody can, find a way to spark that. And for different people, it'll be different things, whether it's like spiders or plants or herps. I think everybody to a certain degree is like curious about some aspect of our natural world. And I think that's a wonderful way to frame science, because then it becomes something that's so much more accessible. And I think it's also like those experiences that get people to actually want to pursue like academic pathways to science if that's what they want. Like I think it has to stem from like both that curiosity and that like belief that you can actually make it once you get there. And I think it's great that you brought up first generation students, because absolutely, like we had Arlene the other day, who talked about like her experience being first gen and what it means to be a scientist. And so I think it's really wonderful to see people who are, going out there and doing really novel science in new ways and adding to the diversity and the perspectives that are currently present in the culture of science.
Yeah, well said.
Thanks. I feel like whenever I do these interviews, I'm just like mirroring back what people say. So you guys make me look good by already having really good answers. So our next question is, how does your personal identity inform your science?
Yeah, this one's interesting. I think among my many identities, like my identity as a Latinx person and a queer person, inform not only the way I approach the science I do, but maybe more so like the labs and academic spaces that I want to be in. I think I have a pretty high standard for myself regarding like the kind of spaces I really do want to work in. And so it definitely affects my choices regarding my academic journey. For example, I am a botany major, but I am here studying spiders because everyone here is amazing and I love to be here. And I'm actually really loving spiders, but I wouldn't have perhaps made that choice if it wasn't informed by my identity.
Yeah, I think that's a really great thing that you bring up that isn't talked about enough, is that idea of like at any point in your scientific career or like progress of getting to that point where you feel like you're a scientist, like you do have agency and you do have the right to find labs and find spaces that are safe for you, that support you, that see you as a person first, and that acknowledge all of your different identities and support that, before like, just sort of seeing you as like a workhorse for the lab. And I think like our program in particular has done a really great job of inviting guest speakers and of like sort of, I think, cultivating that culture of, like this isn't a one-way street. Like you and your mentors should be working collaboratively to create the safe space and to ensure that you are being supported in the ways that you need. And I hope that like everybody is able to find those like mentors or those labs or those spaces where, you know, they're able to sort of flourish completely because of the fact that they're supported in these ways that should just become standard, but unfortunately are not currently, I think, within academia.
Yeah.
Awesome. So our very last fun bonus question is, what's your biggest science hot take?
Yeah, my biggest science hot take is that competition doesn't make science better. I think it's a misconception that by being really competitive, we're holding a high bar for ourselves. But I think actually in a competitive atmosphere, we're much more likely to ask the same questions over and over again because they're safer, and that it generally like slows the progression of science, and that a more collaborative or even just a less competitive environment is going to have better results for science in general and for the kinds of information that we're able to come into.
I don't think I'm supposed to have favorites, but I think that might low-key be my favorite hot take that I've heard so far. No, I think that was so awesome, and I think I thought of it very much in terms of like coming from Berkeley and like entering Berkeley and like being really sort of scared and turned away from STEM as like a major, just because so many people talked about how competitive and exclusionary it was, and I was like, I like that just wasn't a culture that I wanted to be a part of. And so I just completely sort of shied away from science until very, very late in my undergrad career. And so, yeah, to your point, I think absolutely creating that sort of competition, that exclusion, it deters people from joining science. And it also just lessens your ability to collaborate with other people and to see things in different ways. And the number of times I've like been in a class or like I've been even sitting with like all of you like in a discussion and somebody will say something like that. Like I never would have thought to think of it in that way. And now that I have like this, like absolutely is going to change my perspective on this topic forever. So that was my favorite like science hot take ever.
I thought about it for a while. I'm like, what is my hot take? I think that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was a really good one. And now you're going to make me think about mine a little bit harder because I'm realizing I should come up with a better one. But
Cool.
those were all of our sort of preset questions, but we do have a question from the chat. So from L Case, our most frequent viewer, do you think your next professional steps will be botany or arachnology/entomology, or are you keeping your options completely open?
Yeah. Hey, Lily. I think I'm keeping them open because science does work in such a connection-based way. I think now that I have this sort of background in arachnology/entomology, there's like a potential that I might stay with that for a while. Botany is definitely my true love, so I think she'll always be around, always come back to botany. But immediate next steps, I'm not sure. I also am really interested in chemistry and biochemistry, so I might pivot in that direction as well.
That's really cool. I remember when we all sort of first met, I think a couple of the interns were taking OChem and were not particularly having a good time. So the fact that you like love chemistry, I think, is so cool because I definitely know most of my friends are like, oh my gosh, chemistry is so hard. And it's great to hear that you're keeping your options open. Like I think I am always really surprised by the things that I get excited about, and they're never the things that I anticipated.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just, I don't know, it's like weird. And then it becomes like your whole personality. And like, I don't even remember where this sparked from.
It will become your whole personality.
I think Lily actually has a follow-up question. So Lily asked, does this way of thinking about the future inform the way that you work in the present? And if so, how?
Ooh, that's such a good question. I think what people may not realize is that probably most of us, but I'll speak for myself, are just winging it a lot of the time based on the opportunities that are available to us. But I think, yeah, not having a super set idea of where I want to be in like 5 years, it allows me to make choices based on what feels good now, which I'm excited to have that freedom. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to lead life, especially at this, I think, point, like in your early 20s. There were so many different opportunities. And like I think for you, like you're getting to go to UC Berkeley in the fall, and that'll be like a big transition point. And I'll just tell you up front, like Berkeley has so many resources, like so many different things that you can do. And I think like I'm in some ways sometimes jealous of colleagues or like peers who have always known what they wanted and are able to pursue that very sort of like independently and singularly, but as somebody who like gets curious and likes to wander and explore. I think that's a great way to frame it of like, if you keep yourself open to all of these opportunities, like you'll find new things to be excited about, and you'll find new, like, I think opportunities like breed other opportunities. And so I like hope that that is how it works out for you at Berkeley and sort of beyond, that you get to stay open and then meet really amazing people and have these amazing things that you get to do sort of down the road.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, I hope so too. I registered for classes this morning.
Oh my gosh, exciting. We'll have to talk about it later of like which classes you're taking. Yeah. But that basically wraps up all of our questions today for Sophia. So thank you so much for joining us. It was awesome getting to talk to you outside of our like apartment. And before we officially end, we do want to encourage everybody watching to follow our social media channels, both on Instagram and Twitter. You'll see them posted below on the banner and on the screen. And this will allow you to just join us on all of our virtual adventures this summer. In addition, tune in next week. We're going to be having both myself and Tala, as well as Delson, doing our interviews. So those are going to be scheduled soon, and we'll post those new dates and times in our Instagram. And with that, I'll let everybody go, and I hope you all have a really great day.